You ever go on a road trip with your friends into outer space, have a run-in with some aliens, and then find yourself adrift in the dark vastness of the cosmos with a violent apostate princess of bird people? Well, that's what's happened to our buddy Bishop, mutant time cop and large gun enthusiast.
Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, and I'm taking issue with Team X 2000, which sees old Lucas on a wacky adventure with Deathbird, of all people. Let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page, or turn our heads.
The cover is pretty active, with the aforementioned Deathbird and Bishop alongside Cable and numerous other characters we'll get to know soon enough. They're all attacking something off-panel, and according to a caption, are part of a revolution against the Shi'Ar Empire.
You took away Casual Fridays, and we're here to take it back!
Written by R. Smithy and colorist Sean Ruffner, who's joined on art by Kevin Lau, Sean Parsons, Marlo Akiza, Kevin Tinsley, and Cabin Boy.
Thank you, fellow crewmates. I'm off. And when I return, I shall be a cabin man.
We begin with Deathbird recalling a recurring dream of being in a dining hall with her sister Lilandra, whom she specified as the magistrix of the Shi'Ar, which is kind of clunky convenience for the reader in case they aren't aware, because this would not be new information for Bishop, just like the narration that follows it. We seem to be civil. No longer am I, Deathbird, considered the renegade usurper of the throne.
You know, as it is, people already find other people's dreams boring without being told information they're already fully aware of.
But hey, maybe it's because I'm not so familiar with this character, and she really is so egocentric that she just casually refers to herself in the third person. She goes on about the dream, enjoying being treated respectfully and on equal terms with her sister, as she's served a platter with not a meal, but a slip of paper that reads Gith, basically her people's equivalent of rodents, and this recalls unpleasant memories of childhood. As a youngling, my parents would punish me by remanding me to what we called a mercy box. I'd listen to the vermin devour their own in the echoing chambers, frightened, until I confessed my trespassing, whether I was repentant or not.
I was even put in there for writing graffiti on the wall, which actually turned out to be a good thing, since that's when my class of younglings had that really unfortunate encounter with Anakin Skywalker after he went all dark side.
The woman that served the plate avoids eye contact as she leads Deathbird to a cellar door, opening it to reveal a veritable Gith infestation. Remembering an old vow she made, that we don't really get told, she attacks the critters with her bare hands, refusing to let them escape the cellar. Team X 2000!
Because this was published in late 1998, early 1999, and the hype train for the year 2000 could not possibly date this book in the slightest.
Paradox lost.
Well, it's always in the last place you look.
Killing the Gith felt liberating, empowering even, and she returns to the dining hall, only to find her sister gone. She takes the cover off her plate to reveal a dead bird.
And the cook still spit in it.
She's feeling very hungry and is about to chow down, which makes me wonder if, given their ancestry, this counts as cannibalism, but the dream ends there. She and Bishop are playing chess, and he figures it's space dementia, given how long they've been stuck in their shuttle looking for a way home since they were separated from Bishop's team in X-Men number 345. Deathbird thinks it's a vision from Shara, one of the all-female Shi'Ar deities, but isn't sure what it means. Hold on, Deathbird. Pawn can't attack a piece directly in front of it, only diagonally.
What soldier is unable to attack in full sight of the adversary?
We went over this when you asked why the Rook doesn't have a plasma cannon.
Bishop wins the round, and she naturally objects, feeling insulted when her opponent suggests he had better focus. He explains that while he considered the assets of his pieces, she charged in and left her king vulnerable, and since she considered this a war simulator of some kind, she figured the king should be able to protect itself.
Well, too bad. The king didn't bother buying insurance, and that's why you've got final expenses to pay.
Suddenly changing his mind about her dream, Lucas suggests that maybe it's about her being an exterminator that does her job without regard for her people, symbolized by the dead bird, and that Deathbird's thrill at the sight of a challenge is more detrimental to her people. Deep down, she feels guilty. She's intrigued by this interpretation, even if she doesn't agree, and further innuendo points to the two having been intimate recently. Outwardly, Bishop calls it a mistake, but his narration admits he does find her attractive. But as a soldier, he doesn't share her desire to rule, and isn't swayed by the honor of having been found worthy of her. The flirtation is interrupted by a response to their distress beacon. A Shi'Ar probe sends them a garbled message in both human and Shi'Ar. It calls for assistance and seems to want them to return to Earth. Then a series of beams connects several devices to generate a jump gate.
Apparently there's some devoted Jewish people within the Shi'Ar. Good for them.
They're suddenly attacked by a larger vessel, manned by aliens that Deathbird apparently stole repair parts from in Uncanny X-Men number 358. Too bad you can't pick and choose who gets your distress signal, I suppose. She wants to stay and fight, but Bishop uses pesky human common sense and flies the ship into the jump gate before it closes. They end up on the far side of Earth's moon.
I'm reading, no sign of Gary Larson. Repeat, no sign of Gary Larson.
When they arrive, they find a pretty strange sight. The presence of behemoth-class ships from the Shi'Ar Armada. Shi'Ar Armada? In Earth space. Not exactly something Lalandra would authorize. Their ship is locked in a tow beam and taken aboard one of the vessels, while we go to New York, home of the new Shi'Ar Empire. And by the looks of Lady Liberty there, I'm guessing they just took over from those talking apes that wouldn't stop harassing Charlton Heston. Thousands are gathered to commemorate Earth and space birds, whose empress is not whom you'd expect. Her name is Alana Nurmani, daughter of Lalandra and ruler of the known universe.
And parts of New Jersey.
At her side appears to be Angel, a well-aged dazzler literally singing her praises, and Spider-Man baddie Vulture giving her a gift from the lower regions for Her Majesty leading them into the new millennium.
Oh, another macaroni necklace. Thank you. I'll wear it later. I'll put it with the others for now.
Yeah, if the young ruler here wasn't example enough of the manga anime influence on the art, you have this blonde in twin tails that, with those ear-like protrusions on her headband, basically looks like a bunny girl. She's presenting Alana with a hollow communication device to speak with the Grand Admiral, who tells her of the Shi'Ar-class vessel they captured. Weird to name a class of spaceship after your own race, but whatever. And how it came through a jump gate, even though they were supposed to all be destroyed. Because getting rid of fast and efficient travel across space sounds like a great idea for an empire that spans galaxies.
I am too smart. I am too smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
Alana leaves her husband Angel to play king in her absence while she takes Sauron to greet whoever was on that ship. Bishop and Deathbird are greeted by armed guards, there to detain them until the Queen arrives. But the woman with death in her name just doesn't like that idea and goes on the offensive, too quickly for her companion to stop her, and according to narration, not wasting time to incapacitate them. She is as her name implies.
In that she kills people and often flies into window panes.
The implication that she killed a guard or two makes it rather odd that Bishop tells the surviving third to hold his fire. What does he expect him to do but shoot? He said he was a soldier, you'd think he'd understand. Just as well, apparently the riveting gunfire drowned him out. Fortunately, the blaster was set to stun, and while the ability to absorb and rechannel energy could have been useful, it also could have made things worse, so Lucas figures it's best to just sit tight until Lalandra can clear them. After he's taken away by some guards, Deathbird awakens later in the medical bay, gene scanning having confirmed her identity for Alana. The young queen explains that her mother Lalandra was killed in a war the Terrans waged out of fear of Shi'Ar conquest, so they ended up conquering Earth anyway. While there are some rebellious factions, most of the planet has accepted Shi'Ar rule. We get a hint as to who Alana's pappy is when, while chiding her mother's trust in humans, she tells her guards to skedaddle. Telepathically.
That's right. Her father is Pat Sajak!
The current year is 2018, so at the time of the publishing of this book, 2 decades since Deathbird disappeared, thought dead after saving her people from the Phalanx. It's going to take a while to absorb that fact, but for the time being, she'll be pampered like a queen, given a tour of the Empire the next day, and her escort, Bishop, sent to her room. As the Great One leaves, Alana secretly instructs a doctor to run another test, and to report any anomalous results.
And let's not get Maury Povich involved this time. His audience will overreact to anything, and it's starting to give me a headache at this point.
Bishop awakens from a sedative inside a cell next to a stocky prisoner, claiming his presence must be a ruse, since Bish died years ago. This is Cain Marco, aka the Juggernaut, no longer unstoppable, but now a tad unhinged. A narration caption says Bishop explains how he got there, and Marco instantly believes him, I guess, knowing about the jump gate and wondering if the others came along, or maybe his past self did. But when Lucas asks where the X-Men are, Cain goes back to thinking this is a trick to get him to reveal the location of the Morlocks. Someone's coming, Bishop thinks, as there are already guards in his cell ready to take him away.
We've actually been standing here for 20 minutes waiting for you to notice us. Stephen kept loudly coughing, and I was playing Brick Breaker on my phone at full volume. You need to learn to focus, buddy.
He's taken to Deathbird, who's soaking in a rejuvenating bath and assures she may be undressed but is covered by bandages, not to mention strategic bubbles of the soap and dialogue variety. He wants them to get out of here, realizing they're time displaced, and wanting to speak to Alana, while he's undressing and getting into the bath. He's objecting to relaxing while he's relaxing. This is either rushed pacing or the dude has suffered head trauma, or he's consciously and intellectually objecting, but at the same time instinctually not denying the opportunity to be sponge-baited by a woman he's attracted to.
All we need is the resident pervert to sneak in for a peek, only to be comically and violently thrown out of the palace, and this would officially qualify as a manga.
We go to the royal bedchamber, where Alana psychically tells Warren to stay out of her royal business, and probably induces him to sleep, leaving him with a bunch of live birds perched around, while she goes to see Talo, who can apparently see the future to some degree. He tells her that Deathbird could either be the linchpin in securing her rule with rebel sympathizers and anyone pining for the days of Lalandra, or be its destruction. So the young Empress will have to make her an offer she can't refuse. So I guess The Godfather is a universal movie. Or, failing persuasion, take over her mind like she has with others. The next day, as they travel on a hover platform past some starving people begging for food, Alana says she'll be taking off after taking out the Resistance, and wants to leave Earth under Deathbird's control, since it was her teachings that led to Shi'Ar dominance. The legendary warrior asks how old her alleged niece is, since she can't be more than 18, but no mention has been made of her birth.
I demand to see your birth certificate. I mean your birth certificate. Then I want to see your birth certificate.
That topic is apparently forthcoming.
He was born all right, just like you said.
Bishop, traveling behind the two women, notices how deprived and malnourished the people look when a cloaked individual grabs him, asking for food. And an internal monologue that seems totally natural and oh so necessary, Lucas notices how this contact makes him aware of the danger people are in, but the stranger's confident eyes seem to probe Bishop's soul.
Are you talking to a vagrant or perusing a dating app?
Sauron knocks the guy aside because he at least found it amusing, but the man, revealed to be a longshot, joins like-robed figures to confirm via psychometrics that it was indeed Bishop. He apparently can pick up psychic readings by touching people's clothes or something. Alana's craft is stopped by desperate citizens decrying the Empress's actions, as their grandchild is starving like so many, deprived of adequate provisions, until someone reveals to her the location of the Morlock base. She then psionically attacks the grandmother, leading Deathbird to conclude she's a mutant, and did not get that power from her mama. Also, maybe it's just me, but this baby's face looks more like a stylized adult face, just smaller. Just as Bishop was about to act, the rest of the cloaked figures reveal themselves as Falcon, Vertigo, and Cable, intent on bringing the time-lost X-Man with them. Vertigo claims to want to settle a score with Sauron, which Nathan seems to think deviates from their orders for 0 casualties, as he engages and busts up several guardsmen. Not sure what he's doing to this guy in the center panel, though. He just screams in pain. There's a sound effect, but otherwise, he's just standing there. If he's been shot, there's no real sign of it, and it's kind of weird. Anyway, Vertigo seems super focused on attacking the Dino Man, who gloats twice about how her mentor failed to defeat him, uses the sun to blind her, and starts draining her mutant energy. The dialogue in this page is pretty clunky and expository, though if you're not aware of the finer details of this guy's powers, it's a decent enough explanation. In need of a diversion, Cable sets off a bomb that, according to narration, was planted the night before, which staves off Imperial reinforcements and further separates Bishop and Deathbird. Before the rebels leave, Longshot goes to help Vertigo, who uses the last of her powers to force Sauron to release his grip. She gets backup from Falcon all of a sudden, who takes the villain's attack, apparently killing him. Alana telepathically gaslights Deathbird, telling her that the Shi'Ar ways and the laws inspired by Birdie's war journals are being desecrated by the rebels, motivating her to get involved. And here's Longshot suddenly appearing to help Vertigo, resulting in a very baffling chain of events.
I thought it was a little weird because the previous page had Falcon say they had to go, with Mr. Psychometrics wanting to go back for their errant teammate, heavily implying he was going to go alone, only for the Avenger to die actually saving her. Now who's going to exchange snarky banter with the Winter Soldier?
Even though it was a sacrifice, it feels like he was taken out rather unceremoniously. Deathbird then attacks Longshot with her talons, while explaining what the neurotoxins are doing to his body as it gets covered in purple stuff.
If her nails had been coated in Sunny Delight, he'd be a dead man.
He falls over unconscious, and narration tells us Vertigo turned herself invisible and retreated to tell the other rebels about their losses. Alana praises her aunt for capturing one of the Morlocks, something all of their forces couldn't do, except someone had to have captured Cain Marco, right? And look at Sauron. He actually killed one of them, and he looks like he's about to get pouty for not getting a pat on the head or something. Deathbird vows to see Shi'Ar rule continue unchallenged, effectively joining the young Empress's cause. Later, Bishop is led underground, where they encounter the de facto leader, Wolverine, now sporting an eye patch over his left eye. When told of who they lost, he accurately guesses that Vertigo went after Sauron, chastising her for jeopardizing the mission based on advice he would have given way back in the day when he didn't think too much about caution. And it's revealed that Vertigo is an older Jubilee.
She didn't pick the name Vertigo because of her powers or anything. She just really got into Alfred Hitchcock's filmography before Earth was conquered.
Giving Bishop the dollar tour of their base, Wolvie explains that they found him using Falcon's birds, since alien tech wouldn't have worked against most other forms of surveillance, and having evolved from birds, the Shi'Ar Queen wouldn't have given them a second thought. But with Wilson gone, that's no longer an option. Getting Deathbird to join her would be a feather in the Queen's cap. The book's pun, not mine. But Bishop doesn't think that'll happen, figuring Bird Lady knows it'd cause a temporal paradox. Though one dissenter figures the odd princess out wouldn't turn on her own people, and would only be further swayed by Alana's empty promises. So saith Dr. Doom.
Are you a real doctor or a doctor like Dr. Pepper's a doctor?
Doom has joined the rebels because the Fantastic Four were killed in the invasion. Now Doom has a lot of time on his hands that Macrame just can't fill.
Cable pops in to provide some history. War erupted on the Shi'Ar homeworld and Lilandra was losing, so sought aid from Earth. Negotiations took place at the X-Mansion with several Avengers in attendance, and I guess they were all feeling very scowly that day. Is Cap doing a Batman impression or something? Anyway, traitors within Lilandra's ranks leaked info of the summit, leading to the deaths of most of Earth's heroes, Xavier, and the previous alien queen, making Shi'Ar conquest that much easier. The brains behind the betrayal was, of course, Alana, who used a combination of Deathbird's journals and hatred of her own mother to take control. The survivors banded together to save humans and mutants alike, preserving Xavier's dream, and thus dubbed their group Team X.
Unfortunately, despite being invaded and on the run, we're also in a legal battle with the makers of plus-size athletic wear, Team XX.
Surviving heroes placed interdimensional jump gates outside Shi'Ar patrol zones, and Doom, respecting Alana's power play but still not one to be ruled over, worked with Beast and Ant-Man to develop probes, hoping to call for allies across the galaxy. Unfortunately, a raid on their Latvian lab killed the two brainy heroes, got Juggernaut captured, and Wolverine down one eye thanks to Sauron. Doom launched the probes, but thought they were all destroyed. Now, let me talk about this page a little. First, Wolvie's patch is on the wrong eye. Second, instead of the events being relayed by a character as in the previous 2 pages, now it's a third-party narrator for some reason.
It can seem like a small thing to harp on, but it's such a weird change from how these events were being described before this page. It makes the storytelling, if in part, feel a little confused. I can't even think of a sensible reason for this change either.
They ask Bishop for help, like they really need to, and we're immediately jumped to Vulture trying to impress a couple women with how he's been invited to the next day's celebration honoring Deathbird. Bishop and Cable show up, the latter convincing him to help them crash the party. It's not exactly clear where they are. They seem to be out in the open for, rebels. But I'll say this, it's impressive that Toombs can speak so clearly with a gun barrel crowding his bridge work. We go to Deathbird, who seems more or less convinced that the Morlocks need to better serve their leaders, and is left alone, while Alana tells Sauron that with Bishop absent, her aunt will join the Empire. Or become a martyr. And I guess it's already a day later because Vulture is fashionably late with supplies for the celebrations. Bishop and Cable are inside the transport as Toombs avoids an inspection by bribing a guard with a Wu-Tang CD, which works because Terran music has become pretty rare.
And if anyone's interested, I have a surplus of Justin Bieber that... Okay, I'll just be on my way now.
Later, Vulture hands the Queen some flowers, but she can tell by his nervous-looking eyes that he's done something treacherous, so has Sauron take him away and security beefed up for likely infiltrators. In the security wing, Vertigo hides some unconscious goons, while Bishop uses a pass key that they got from a guard. Unfortunately, it's not working. Cable wants to call the mission a wash, but Jubilation is too dead set on disabling the perimeter shield and intends to force the door open herself. Meanwhile, in the ballroom, Queen Alana addresses the congregation to honor her most noble ancestor, which sounds like an exaggeration given that it's her aunt that just disappeared for a couple decades, not someone from centuries back. She hands Deathbird a parchment, which bears her birth name, and once she says it aloud, I guess, she's fully restored as an honored member of the Normani family.
Well, this is awkward. I just ordered 10,000 Deathbird business cards.
She actually rejects the offer, insisting that her old name is meaningless and this kind of offering would never buy her allegiance. She reduces the paper to dust in a flash of green energy from her hand. I'm not sure where that came from. Maybe she has energy projection powers I just forgot about, or maybe it's her glove? I don't know. The crowd is stunned by this revelation. The Queen let Vulture watch. Isn't that nice? Nice and contradictory. But Angel and Longshot just smirk. The Magistrix decides to simply kill her outcast aunt. Antcast?
Very well, child. Then prove you are worthy to shepherd our flock.
Okay, so the word flock works because, they're bird people, but shepherd? Kinda sounds a little weird in this context, doesn't it?
Meanwhile, Vertigo has blasted through the door using focused photon light. I'll get to that later. And exposing the shield's power core. Though this tripped an alarm, attracting Sauron and some guards, so Cable lays down cover fire while Bishop places the explosive charge. The fight between Alana and Deathbird begins, the former able to anticipate the Renegade's moods, not just because of her telepathy, but having studied her techniques and battled a simulation. But she still takes a slash to the shoulder.
I'm giving you everything you've aspired for, and still you deny your heritage. I deny nothing. I will always be Shi'Ar, though I will be so on my own terms.
The terms where everyone does what I say, and I get away with doing whatever I want. How does that not make me a good leader?
Outside, Cable's internal monologue is describing exactly what's happening before him, with Sauron going in for a dive bomb. He ducks, and the pterodactyl man heads right for a wall of rubble Bishop apparently set up on the fly. In between panels, I guess. But the villain is going at such high speeds that the makeshift wall instantly crumbles. And by this shot of impact, it looks more like a very small pile of debris he's falling into, rather than decimating. Vertigo can't help because the narration says she's too busy being shot at, and things only get worse as Sauron, who feels humanity never gave him enough compassion, because I guess we needed some last-minute villain motivation, destroys the detonator with a precise peck of his metal-reinforced beak.
You know, you could have saved yourself some time if you didn't bother putting up an ineffective mini-blockade. That's irony, right?
Lucas wrestles with the dino a bit before stabbing him in the eye with a chunk of rock, with Wolverine's regards, of course. With little other option, he grabs his gun, says goodbye to Deathbird while hoping that she gets treated better on this world, and fires at the generator. As the machine destabilizes, Bishop begins absorbing the first wave of energy it releases, unsure how much his mutant abilities will sustain, but pushing his body to its limits.
He's going beyond plus ultra! Hey, given the manga influence at work and superhero influence in My Hero Academia, that's just fitting right there.
The similarly powered Sauron grabs him from behind, absorbing his excess energy, which Bish basically let happen, and is getting totally ripped in the process.
Fitness gyms hate him. Average dinosaur man discovers one weird trick to getting jacked in seconds.
We put our faith in Blast Hard Cheese. Big McLarge Huge.
Slab Bulkhead.
Fridge Large Meats.
Punt Speed Chunk.
Butch Deadlift.
As the guards evacuate, Cable telekinetically seals the doors before the generator explodes, promising his fellow time traveler will be remembered as a hero. Sauron just keeps on absorbing, even as he realizes something ain't right, and probably not that his eye seems to have grown back. Or maybe the power making the socket glow, I don't know. Though probably just an artist error. There's an explosion from which only Bishop emerges, thanks to absorbing just enough kinetic energy to survive. In the ballroom, Angel tells everyone to evacuate while he rescues Longshot, stating he spent too long under the Queen's thumb. Speaking of, she's still fighting and, according to narration, has embraced what Deathbird used to be, but being stranded alongside Bishop has taught her about consequences and how they can sneak up on you in your weakest moment.
When did she learn this exactly? Or is there a forthcoming narration box to explain it all real quickly?
Old Birdie Death uses a kick to paralyze her niece, something she learned from Bishop in an intimate combat session. Not that intimate always means sexy times, but it makes it seem like practicing a kick to someone's skull was used as foreplay, and that's concerning. Before she can deliver a fatal strike, her companion returns.
Bishop? How? You were given up for dead.
Since when? She couldn't have known about the shenanigans with the generator, and no one in the palace mentioned him to her since he was taken by the rebels, so what is she talking about?
Anyway, Bird Lady realized that killing her sister's future spawn wouldn't solve anything, and for now, she'll settle for this defeat, proving the young queen is not the equal of the aunt she idolized. Bishop tells her that compassion is less a weakness and more a sign of honor, and he's proud of her as they begin making out. After an undisclosed amount of time, Deathbird announces that she's leaving the Shi'Ar to hash things out with the Earthlings themselves, since this is not her place or time. Until a proper government is set up, Angel will be a liaison between the two species.
And there will be one network for each of them devoted to 24/7 biased propaganda posing as news. That can only make things better, right?
She and Bishop are ready to go back through the jump gate, and though it'll return them to their own time, it'll unfortunately leave them in the same spot they were stranded in at the beginning of the story. Birdie exchanges salutes with a couple soldiers, so I guess she was Magistrix for a while? The two return to their present with some uncertainty as to whether they'll change things and avoid the war and invasion from ever happening, but for now, One-Eyed Wolverine and his team have a planet in need of repair. Confirming that the shuttle made it through, though they say the probe for some reason, they destroy the jump gate as planned. Cable asks Dr. Doom if they can count on his ongoing cooperation, and the Latvian says that while his role is ended, he has a new destiny to forge, so it's possible they'll be allies again. Right now, though,
there's a planet in need of a monarch. The monarch! Vote Doom or face Doom! Of a different context. Probably gonna need to work on those campaign slogans. That was Team X 2000, a story that asked many questions like, Why was this even a thing?
The premise has the same potential as any of the other possible futures time travel stories we've seen over and over. Characters find out something bad happens that screws up the future, and they try to survive until they can get back to their present. Well, for one of them anyway. But the road this one-shot takes is filled with so many plot holes, it makes the journey feel a lot bumpier than it needed to be. To start with, how did interdimensional jump gates warp Bishop and Deathbird ahead 2 decades? Considering you'd think that by the name they'd cross dimensions, but their purpose was to travel faster in space. And this can't be an alternate reality because they were clearly flung ahead in time without any explanation. The point of the gates was to try to get help from some force in the galaxy in that timeline. But for no reason at all, our main heroes find a gate years before they would have been in place and are now on a Shi'Ar-controlled Earth.
Frankly, I think it would have made more sense if they'd been towed by Doc Brown in his DeLorean.
Heck, maybe some temporal distortions would explain the hiccups in some of the pacing. Changing scenes abruptly on the same page, while not uncommon, can still be jarring. Bishop hearing someone coming as the guards are already in his cell, Longshot acting like he's going to say Vertigo solo only for Falcon to die beating to the scene, or Bishop stating how he can't relax in a bath as he's relaxing in a bath. Then you have the dialogue that explains things we're seeing, or things that'd be better shown, or narration that only does the same thing, only to very rarely add to the visuals rather than just repeat them. And there were times I had to wonder how well the people on this book knew the characters they were dealing with. Giving Longshot 5 fingers on each hand instead of 4 could be viewed as an honest mistake. But take Vertigo, aka Adult Jubilee. The character we know had the ability to generate globules of explosive energy. They could create something akin to blinding fireworks or take out the trunk of a tree. Yet in this future world, she seems to control light in order to turn invisible or shoot lasers. These are very different power sets. And why didn't Logan's eye regenerate? Sure, it's feasible that he could sustain damage so bad that his healing factor couldn't repair it, and there's even the Murasama blade that could potentially kill him, but this was clearly a Wolverine that lost his adamantium, so without that metal constantly poisoning his body, his regenerative powers were amped up, letting him heal faster from more severe injuries.
Nerd!
All Sauron did was slash his face. Where Wolverine is concerned, there are circles, but that's considered basically a handshake.
Even more curious is why he wasn't active on the field. Set aside his fighting skills, he's always been able to skulk around stealthily, and if he's so much more cautious nowadays, why didn't he confirm Bishop was the real deal with his enhanced senses? Why wasn't he fighting soldiers? Was he really so necessary at base camp? Not to mention, he's always been the most marketable X-Man. And Dr. Doom seemed to be just there. Okay, interesting tease at the end with him hinting about ruling the world as it rebuilds, and maybe allying with the heroes again, but he didn't seem to add much to the story other than answering an obscure question of where he'd be in this scenario.
You could have replaced him with just about any villain, and I don't think it would have changed anything. Norman Osborn, Magneto, Paste Pot Pete.
The beginning gives more of an idea for an arc for Deathbird, some path for her to travel and change at the end. But we don't see that journey. Sure, the chess game was a good plot device to act as a catalyst, but it really doesn't seem to factor into the subsequent events. No one referred to as names of pieces in a cold, demeaning way to make her think. No real strategy on Birdie's part. Though I guess from a certain perspective you could say that decisive kick was a diagonal attack, but that's about it. She rejects restoring her name, which was something she would have done at the beginning of the story anyway. She gets into a fight, then narration decided she'd changed and has learned something. There really wasn't much to substantiate this outcome. Also, the rebels are called Morlocks repeatedly, but Team X only used once, as an afterthought. But I guess Morlocks 2000 wouldn't have been as catchy a title. Though maybe Team X 2018 would have at least made more sense as a title, since it takes place well within the second decade of the new millennium. And honestly, kinda sounds better.
But slapping 2000 on things became kind of a trend in the last couple of years of the 90s. Kind of like how a few years before, franchises such as G.I. Joe and Ghostbusters got rebooted with the word extreme in the titles. Because 1990s.
Now, what can I say was actually good about this read? Well, the explanation as to what took out the majority of the heroes was decent, using Sam Wilson's ability to talk to birds as a means of spying on the queen of a race of bird-evolved people was legit clever, and the fight between Alana and Deathbird was pretty good. I liked the aesthetics and designs just fine, though its manga anime influence feels like kind of a double-edged sword. Much of the time it feels like different sexes were drawn by different artists. Men from the more common American comics of the time, and the ladies obviously had larger, more expressive eyes and lithe figures. Maybe it's the eyes that are doing it, but then again, there were times where the eyes were completely blank. While neither is technically bad, the differences can look odd, and coupled with drastic changes to characters, they seldom felt familiar.
It had a couple elements that were cool or at very least passable, but overall, the story felt unfocused and the end result unpolished. It's not really that good, all things said. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.